special bonus episode of Cinemaholics. I'm John Agroni from the Internet, California, and we have an awesome cast on this episode. We have a whole bunch of people here. Let's start with Will Ashton from the regular show. Will, how are you doing?
All right, how you doing, John?
Just great to hear your voice. And then, of course, right across from me, no longer in the broadband basement, up here in the light, Maverick Hines.
Wow. It feels nice to be let out on not a normal recording.
It's a bonus episode, so we can do whatever we want.
Do I get to eat tonight, too?
That maybe. We'll talk about it. We'll see what happens. This is an uncut episode, by the way, so anything goes. And then, of course, calling in from the Internet, Colorado, he is the host of our spin-off podcast, Anyway, That's All I Got. Sam Noland, it's always good to hear from you.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here. As you can clearly hear, it is I, Sam Noland, using my new Ving Rhames voice changer.
That's right. We're having a little bit of an audio difficulty. We tried to fix it, but for whatever reason, Sam Noland sounds like Ving Rhames on this episode. Just take it how you want. I mean, it's fine.
Hey, Sam.
Yes.
Do you prefer Ving Rhames in Pulp Fiction or the Mission Impossible movies?
That's an interesting question.
Or another film of his.
What a question for our question and answer episode.
Ah, yes. Thank you, John, for tying that together into a beautiful bow of podcasting.
Oh, we're just waiting for you to answer the question, then.
Oh, okay. I thought we had moved away from that. Yeah.
No,
I haven't seen him in too much else besides Con Air, which I'm not a big fan of, admittedly.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's been in quite a few films.
I would say, I mean, obviously I'm slightly biased towards Pulp Fiction because, fun fact, it's like my favorite movie ever made. So I would have to go with that, although I do think he does lend a lot to the Mission Impossible movies, specifically some of the later ones. So it's a tough call, but I am going to go Pulp Fiction just because I think the character's a little bit richer.
Interesting. All right.
He does have a lot more money in Pulp Fiction than he does in the later Mission Impossible movies. But, if you're listening and you're like, you know what, I want to know more about what Sam Noland thinks of the Mission Impossible movies, guess what? There's a whole Mission Impossible episode that you guys did on Anyway, That's All I Got. And so I'm just going to plug that episode that came out a month ago. Why not?
That's correct. Thank you, John. Yeah, and a fun fact, I was having a migraine headache during that episode.
That's right. So I heard the full story.
If you listen closely, yes, it's a fun story. And if you want to hear that story, then you can listen to our newest episode, which just came out on Friday, which is the episode where we catch up on all the feedback after this month-long break we took so that we can start making it a regular part of the show. So we had a lot of fun during that, and that should be out now.
It is a great episode.
If you want to see the story of how that was made, you can watch my Twitch live stream where I'll be playing YouTube videos of kids reacting to that video.
It's amazing, actually.
Yeah, don't tell the Fine Brothers, they'll sue me.
There's also a live chat that you can subscribe to. Anyway, this is our question and answer episode, our Q&A episode, that we've been plugging for a while. We've been wanting to do this. It's been difficult because we had to schedule it. We had to get the right amount of questions. And so here's the deal. You faithful, loyal, wonderful Cinemaholics listeners send us questions over the last couple of months. All kinds of questions about what we think of lots of different movies and eras and topics of discussion that we've just never gotten to. And it's great because we're going to devote this entire bonus episode to just answering your questions. So this is our own sort of feedback episode. So let's get this ball rolling. Let's start up with our first person. So this is from a Facebook fan of ours, DeWitt. And DeWitt asked us, in your opinion, DeWitt, by the way, had two questions. That's right. And so we decided to answer both of them. So because we really appreciate DeWitt being one of the first to ask any questions.
He asked me a question in private, and I'll tell you what that question is after these two.
We'll talk about a tease. Okay, well...
Had to walk away from that one.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. So DeWitt's question, the first one was, in your opinion, what is the most underrated and overrated movies of all time? Now, before we get to this, underrated and overrated movies, any of you who've listened to me for a while know that I hate this idea of underrated and overrated movies. I complain about the idea of it. I think that if you say something is overrated, you're not really commenting on the movie. You're commenting on what people not thinking about the movie the way you wish they did. And that's part of me. This just kind of rubs me the wrong way when I hear this sort of thing. But we're still going to talk about it within the context that I personally enjoy. Let's start with Sam Noland, our guest / frequent collaborator. Sam,
Yes.
how would you tackle this? Go for it.
I think it's interesting what you say about how it's making more of a comment on the discussion around a film itself rather than the actual film. I'd never really thought about that before. But I guess when I think about underrated and overrated, I just think of a broad sense of what do I think doesn't get the credit it deserves, or if it's overrated, it gets more credit than it deserves. And again, it's like one of the most subjective things.
And I can understand that to an extent.
Movie discussion.
Yeah.
I'll start. I'll get the controversial one out of the way. Whenever someone asks me what is, like, in your opinion, what's the most overrated movie ever made, two come to mind. One of which is actually both of which I can understand and appreciate why anyone would like it. I'm not even arguing that. I can't do it. That's the thing. And both of these I have tried multiple times. John, I think you know what one of them is. But the other one, I'll start with the somewhat sillier one. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I have never been a fan of. I just
breaking
can't
my
get
heart.
behind.
I don't know what to do with that.
And the reason why, like I alluded to a moment ago, is it's entirely personal. I had a not to get all gloomy and introspective and anything, but high school was an interesting time for me, and so when I watched that movie, I don't have fun the way I think a lot of those of you who do like it. I don't think I have the same kind of fun.
People.
You people, yeah. I'm looking. I see more of like this is getting so weird, and it's going to sound like I'm just some manic depressive maniac or something.
Dream boy.
Yes, manic pixie dream Sam. How about that? And I just don't like that kind of person that Ferris Bueller is, because I knew a lot of people like Ferris, and I didn't like them, and it conjures up those memories, and I just don't have a good time watching this guy.
So funny, because
get away
my
with everything.
My high school experience was my best friend was Ferris, and I was basically Cameron, always along for the ride, always kind of putting up with his antics, and that's probably why I love the movie, is because I thought that was pretty faithful to what it's like to have a person like that in your life, where you kind of love them and hate them at the same time. Well, I don't hate my best friend at all, but
John, I'm right here. Okay,
hey, no, we did not go to high school together. You were still wearing diapers.
Whoa, yeah, probably.
You know what, Sam? On one level, I get what you're saying, because Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I don't look at that movie and I'm never like, man, that's an achievement. That's like, people need to knock on doors and evangelize this movie finally. But no, I mean, to me, like, the quintessential high school movie is Breakfast Club, and I'm very upset, by the way, with Anthony, who does not like Breakfast Club. But that's another.
Yes.
I love the John Hughes, formula for high school movies. But Will Ashton, you got to weigh in on this. This is a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like to answer like all-time questions, because I think that puts some pressure on it. I mean, I can name a couple movies that I think have gotten overrated in like recent years. I mean, I have only so limited a knowledge of film as far as, the history of it, in the sense that I don't know like the greatest movies and the worst movies of like the 20s, for instance. But I don't know. I mean, I noticed in recent years that Step Brothers has really gotten a better reception than I think it deserves.
Oh, that's because it's really good.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's because it's not.
It's hilarious.
That's been Will Ashton's contribution. We can move on now. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry, buddy.
I feel it's like a one joke premise, and I like Adam McKay and Will Ferrell's contributions. I mean, Anchorman's one of my favorite comedies, so I never quite got why people were so high to regard that film. I just found
I feel personally attacked.
I gotta say, Will, that is an example of a movie that sticks to landing, though, because that ending just it's one of the perfect ways to do a third act. It really is.
Well, I think
based on everything that comes before it.
I think the ending would be better if they didn't get redeemed, because they're just completely unredeemable characters.
How dare you?
Well, like they're jerks. They're bad people. They're not good people. And that's fine. I mean, most comedies they're bad people.
They're the protagonists.
Well, that doesn't matter. I
It's
mean,
about
like,
the child at heart. I don't
I
understand
don't
this.
care.
This
They're
coming
bad
from-
people. They're trying to murder each other.
I love that
And
Sam dogged on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. We're like, yeah.
Yeah, like I can get Ferris Bueller's Day Off to an extent.
Will's like,
Step Brothers.
Step Brothers. And we're like, what the shit? Are you serious?
so anyway, I don't know if that's all time, but as of late, I feel like that comedy gets way too highly regarded.
I'm gonna say Spy. I do not
How dare you.
understand how people look at the movie Spy and are like, man, that was awesome. That movie sucks. The movie's terrible. It's boring.
Well, at least
There's
it's
like-
written.
At least it's what?
At least it's written.
What-
I'm
what- what
implying
are
that
you
Step
trying to
Brothers
s-
is not a written movie. It's just kind of improv to the highest extent, in the sense that it just doesn't go anywhere. It meanders.
Okay, so here's the okay. Step Brothers makes me laugh. Step Brothers, I would watch it multiple times.
I wanna watch
Step
it right
Brothers
now.
isn't an objectively amazing movie, but it's just campy, funny comedy. Spy is just nothing.
I disagree.
Like it's aggressively nothing. Sam Noland, you've been listening to this.
Yes.
I just want to hear your drive-by opinions on everything that's been said.
I have not seen either of these movies, so it's interesting. I think it's funny that they're both comedies, because I think the thing with comedies is that they can tend to bring out a lot of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like polar opposite reactions. You know,
Right,
either
yeah.
it's like the greatest, most revolutionary, most funny thing ever, or it's just an insult to the laugh itself, or something like that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about like if a comedy is bad, it's just so difficult to enjoy the movie because
Yeah. Because it
you
doesn't
know,
have anything else to offer, really.
Yeah. But I would say that like some terrible movies out there, like I don't know, we don't have to get into it, but like Suicide Squads and stuff like that. Like movies like that, actually, even when they're not trying to be funny, they can be so bad that that makes no sense.
I think like The Room is a pretty popular example of this. Like that's a movie that's trying to be very serious and ends up being like this masterpiece of a failure of its comedic proportions, where it's like so self-serious to the point where it's like comedically heightened, and that can be rewarding and redeemable. Whereas like a bad comedy, it just doesn't do nothing for you. It does nothing for you. It just is a meandering, tedious experience to watch.
Okay, Maverick Hines. We haven't heard any underrated movies yet.
That's what I was going to ask. Are we doing just like overrated, and then we're going to go back around
Just
to
kind of do whatever
underrated?
you want. So do whatever
All right, my overrated list was like, I got way too nervous because, being the Cinesober guy on the podcast with you three is like I have to have like if I answer something that was made in this.
You're the
last year,
Kevin on trivia night, though, where you're going to be like a savant.
I see that puts more pressure on me. So I was just making lists, but what's really funny is one of them on my list that I wasn't going to say. I think after hearing kind of Sam saying and his explanation for Ferris Bueller makes sense for me, and I feel like I'm going to get some shit for this. Mine, I would say, would be Monty Python and the Holy Grail for me.
Okay.
You
Because-
heathen.
For the exact same reasons
What?
that Sam, you explained for Ferris Bueller. It's just like
Go
I don't think
on.
I don't feel like
sleep 30 yards from you.
I just don't feel like I've ever connected to that movie like everyone else does. Now, I have to give the movie, like, I'm not saying I think it's bad. I think it definitely has a couple funny moments. Like, I think
Funny moments.
the flesh wound thing is funny. I like that, whatever. But, like, when everyone's like, oh, we could watch Monty Python, I'm always like, well, okay, I guess.
God help us.
Yeah. So.
Well,
You can't see it, but there are tears in my eyes.
There are tears in
Go
my
ahead,
soul,
Will. Go
man.
ahead. Go ahead and defend him.
No, I'm not
That's
going to
what-
defend him in the sense that I do like the film. I think it's funny. I do agree, though, that I think there was a point, I guess for us, it probably was about middle school, maybe high school, where like that movie kind of gained a resurgence and like everyone was like watching and rewatching, at least as far as where I was from.
No,
to
it
point,
was the same for me, which is why I brought it up. Because
Right.
it was like there was this time period where everyone I knew, it was like a ninth grade to 10th grade for me. It was in that area. I mean, everyone was talking about this movie nonstop, and I was like, I felt bad for being the one.
And-
Like it was like me being a kid who said he didn't like pizza or something.
Sure.
Right? Like I just felt like the weirdo.
but I will say, even though I do like that film, I actually prefer the other two Monty Python movies. I think more than
I think you've mentioned
Holy
that.
Grail.
Like, isn't Life of Brian?
Life of Brian, I think, is actually an objectively better film, but also I think it's also a better comedy. Just the sense that it's, it's like kind of like spoof of the Bible or the BC times. And I think that just there's a little more weight there, there's a little more structure that I think makes it a better film. And I just think the bits in Meaning of Life, because they get to be like R-rated and a little more raunchy, I think those are funnier to me. But I do like the Holy Grail, My Python the Holy Grail, but I do agree that I think there was a time where that movie just got so like overplayed to the point where you just kind of knew all the beats and all the jokes, and if you didn't really like love the movie to begin with, that can be kind of a tedious thing to relive over and over and over again. So I can sympathize with you, Maverick, even if I don't agree with it.
Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
Let's just let that one go. We don't have to. Underrated movies. Maverick, what was your pick for that one?
I had a couple. One of them I'm kind of ashamed of because I don't actually think it's good. I just love it a lot, and no one else does. And that's Reign Over Me with Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle.
You mentioned that before, and you sounded like embarrassed when you.
I'm constantly embarrassed by how much I love this movie.
I mean, it has like a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's fresh.
It's whatever.
It's fresh.
Is it because of the Adam Sandler thing?
No, I don't know what it is. I watched it when I was younger, and I really connected with it somehow, not because of my personal experiences, and what the movie's talking about, but I just really liked it, and it's always been one for me. And like, it's always funny to me because when I like bring it up to anyone, they're like, "What? Like, no one knows about this movie." And in my world, I'm sure in your guys' lives, it's a little bit more but
I'd say Punch Drunk Love is usually the Adam Sandler movie people prefer. Which they're talking about, it's a great movie. I think
one of my favorites.
Yeah. I would say, though, that if we're talking about underrated Adam Sandler movies in particular, I've always appreciated Funny People a lot.
Okay, I like that one too.
I think it has it's a bit of a polarizing movie. I think some people just really dislike it because of the length, but I think it's I think it's pretty great.
My only thing with Funny People is I just really wished it ended at the 2-hour mark. I felt like it just kind of there was like a point where it kind of epilogued in a way that I found was kind of like unnecessary.
How long is the movie?
It's
2009?
Like 150 minutes long. It's like 2.5 hours.
Oh, I thought you said how old the movie is.
No.
Underrated movies. Sam Noland.
Excuse me. I want to mention two really fast and then get to the big one. Monsters University. I don't think gets enough credit. I think it's a really solid movie that gets condescended to because it's not as good as Monsters Inc., which might be true, but doesn't mean it's bad. And then another one would be one of my favorite sci-fi movies. I talked about it on my other feedback episode. Westworld, I think, does not get enough credit as being like one of the legit greatest sci-fi movies ever made.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been meaning to watch the movie, but I heard it's actually kind of a polarizing film to watch.
It is sort of because it's not action-y like in the slightest. Except for like maybe the last 20 minutes, it's actually a rather tedious film, and I think that turns a lot of people off. But I think throwing out the movie because it's not exciting in spite of all its fascinating sci-fi ideas, it's sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think that's really like Michael Crichton's one of his strongest achievements, if not the strongest achievement, at least in terms of writing. But the big one I wanted to talk about. It's a movie that came out recently within the past 5 years or so, or I suppose 6 years. And when it first came out, it was generally well liked. It got positive reviews, and no one really there were those of us who disliked it. But ever since then, it's taken sort of a decline in popularity, and now it's at the point where it is just unfairly condescended to and discounted as not having any substance.
And of course, I'm Star Wars: The Ewok Adventure.
I was going to guess it was Avatar. Adventure. Is it Avatar?
Not Avatar. Okay. It's not Avatar. It's actually Iron Man 3.
Oh, okay.
I actually really like Iron Man 3, and I'm right there with you.
That is some of the greatest character work that has been done in the entire MCU, and no one talks about it anymore. Because
people only care about the Mandarin twist, and there's a lot more going on in that movie, yeah.
And even within the Mandarin twist, there's a really salient statement there, I believe. Not to get too political, I think, but there's that. There's the arc that Tony goes on, I think, is one of the best arcs in the entire MCU. I think it's really a shame that they sort of forgot about it by the time Age of Ultron rolled around, but that's neither here nor there. I just think it's a really strong movie. It has some tonal problems. Some characters don't quite work, but I think overall it's really strong. It's really confidently made, and it feels like the product of a director, unlike some of these other MCU movies that shall not be named. But yeah, I think that really deserves to be revisited and looked at outside of the wacky Mandarin stuff. Like, look at the story it's trying to tell. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then we usually don't agree on some of the MCU films from that time period, so that's interesting to hear from you. Okay, for me, underrated. This movie, it's not that people hate it. A lot of people really hate this movie. When it first came out, I think its Rotten Tomato score is like in the 60s. So it wasn't like a big failure or anything, but I think people look at this movie and they wrongly criticize it. So I'm not looking at it as like a rating thing. I'm looking at it as like people just don't get this movie and they criticize it for reasons that I think are just completely out of left field, including Malashin. And that is The Last Samurai. The Last Samurai, which I just rewatched with Maverick.
Well, I have something to say about this, but
people wrongfully.
Sure, I would like to point out this was also on my list of underrated ones I was going to talk about.
Let's talk about it together. The Last Samurai. I think people wrongfully criticize and dismiss this movie as being like full of white savior tropes, but that is so incomplete because the movie is, in my view, a repudiation of Dances with Wolves. It has some of the same format, but it takes like a true life story and it adds some authenticity to a period of time in Japan that there aren't a lot of movies about, by the way. And it tells a very historically faithful, even though it's historical fiction, story about a group of people, and it celebrates the actual samurai. It doesn't elevate the Tom Cruise character because, spoilers for Last Samurai, not specific spoilers, but like the general idea of it, like they don't win. Tom Cruise isn't able to save anybody. He's not a white savior because he doesn't save anything. He is, to me, the example of a white ally. Somebody who recognizes his privilege, where he comes from, his own demons, and then channels that into something productive for a group of disenfranchised people that he was originally positioned to hurt and intimidate. And so that's why when I watch this movie, I'm like, this is like close to a masterpiece. I think it's beautiful. The sound design is unmistakably like rich for the time period. And I just think people just superficially write it off and are like, white guy pretends to be a samurai. And that is 100% not what this movie is trying to do. And go ahead, Will Ash.
No, I was just
let's hear what the white guy thinks.
No, I was just going to say, you discredited me. And what I was going to say is, when we were talking about the film, you brought up, hey, I just rewatched The Last Samurai. And I was like, I haven't seen that movie in a while. I don't remember it too well. But I know a lot of people complain about the white savior thing. And then you got mad at me saying that I was saying that when really I was just asking if that was a valid criticism. So
that sounds much like something John
that is
would do.
something I would do. Yeah. I'm sorry, Will.
So I just wanted to clear the air on that one.
Well, actually, I'm sorry for character assassinating you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, but like I said, this was on one of my lists to mention too. I love this movie. This has always been one of my favorite movies, even before venturing into cinesobriety and cinemaholicness. I just love it. You said everything, so I don't want to reiterate it, but yeah, it was on my list too. I love it.
Yeah. And underrated films, Will Ashton, and we got to move on.
This is a movie that I've had a very conflicting relationship with. When I first saw it as a kid, as a teenager, actually I think more of a preteen, I loved it. I thought it was just righteously funny, just a good time. I'd rewatch it and still get a lot of good laughs out of it. Then I got older and I heard the critical reception too, and I was like, I guess they're right. It's, it's kind of superfluous and, it can be a bit insensitive, and I guess it is just kind of a knockoff of a certain other film. So I guess I can see. And that
is The Matrix Revolutions.
No, actually, well, is that the second one or the third one?
The third one.
Well, I don't like the third Matrix, but no, I was, I was revisiting it a couple years ago, and I was like, you know what? I just think this movie is pretty funny. I'm gonna go with Kung Pao Enter the Fist, which is
my god, that's amazing.
It's a comedy.
I fully applaud that. Yeah,
I can't, defend it on its critical merits, but it just makes me laugh, and I think it's understandable that the movie has, like, I would have to assume, like, a 25%, maybe lower on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm not going to say it's a good film. You know, there's a lot to criticize about it, but it makes me laugh. And so, you know, I think that deserves to be considered underrated.
I just looked it up, 13%.
Yeah, I figured it was pretty low. So
yeah. You know,
I could also go with
totally
Batman v
get it,
Superman,
though.
I guess. But I'll go with Kung Pao this time.
All right. So that was a lot. We spent a lot of time on that question, but it was a big question. So DeWitt asked another question. What are your thoughts on 500 Days of Summer? Yeah. So this movie, I kind of recognize that it's like a cliched, tropey kind of thing, but I actually I appreciate this movie on a lot of levels. It has some very inventive filmmaking techniques that when it came out about a decade ago now, it kind of influenced romantic comedies moving forward enough that we got away from certain things. I think specifically the like reality and expectations device that they use in this movie, the way that it sort of rejects the Elizabethtown / Garden State manic pixie dream girl, which we kind of briefly joked about in the sense that she's not going to solve all of his problems. And I don't know. I thought it was like kind of an honest and frank movie about romantic relationships. But a lot of the like, it still had like other tropes in it, which was weird. Like it had the like Chloe Grace Moretz plays the like kid who is like the, you know, super wise, romantic, you know, best friend kind of character that, you know, there were still tropes in it, but it was also fighting tropes. And so it's just kind of a mixed bag for me. What about you, Sam Noland? Do you enjoy this one? Have you checked it out?
I have not seen it. No. One thing the listeners, if you're not familiar with me, one thing you'll realize very quickly is that my knowledge in the art of film is all over the place. So like rather than sort of focusing on one era, I've tried to be a polymath and see like all kinds of different stuff, and thus I miss a lot of important stuff like 500 Days of Summer. So I've been wanting to see it for a long time, and I look forward to eventually checking it out.
On a purely technical level, it's worth seeing. I think it actually has, you know, done some pretty smart things. And I would say that it is, I guess you could say it's the movie that really put Zooey Deschanel like in a bigger spotlight. But I don't know, this was like the first time I think you saw her with like the bangs and the kind of like mysterious, quirky character. Do you think that's fair to say, Will Ashton? I know you're not the biggest fan of Mark Webb.
Whoa,
so,
what?
Like, I don't know where you're at with this one.
Wait, why are you saying I'm not a fan of Mark Webb?
Well, we talked about like the Spider-Man movies. And
Well, okay, to be fair, I dislike The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I guess I was more indifferent to The Only Living Boy in New York than anything else, but I liked his other two films, you know. I liked the first Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay, all right. And do you like this one?
I do, yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I haven't seen this film in, almost 10 years now. So I haven't had the fresh revisit that I feel like I need to with this film. But I agree with a lot of what you were saying. I think it is a film that is very pointedly commenting on that manic pixie dream girl trope. I don't think it's like the be all end all of that. I think there is like some ways that kind of falls in line with that. But I think it's kind of in the same vein as a film that it's obviously alluding to a lot, which is The Graduate, where it's just kind of like the evolution of the romantic comedy and kind of questioning like, okay, do we really need to like even though with protagonists we kind of assume that they're in the right, are they really in the right? Like it's a film that kind of questions like, is Joseph Gordon-Levitt really like the guy we should be rooting for here, or does he have his own, you know, preconceived notions of what a romance should be, and is he kind of infusing that in a fairly toxic way into his relationship with Summer? And so, I do think, I always love, like, you know, that expectations versus reality scene. I remember when I saw that in high school, that was, like, one of those scenes, as far as my relationship with film, where it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like, this is, like, something I've always, like, felt in life, like, portrayed on film in a way that was, in my opinion, at the time, fairly brilliant. And those scenes will always stick with me in some way or another. But, I mean, I haven't seen it in close to a decade now, so I don't have the freshest opinion of it. But I do really like it, and I think it holds a special place in my heart. So I give it a thumbs up. I mean,
yeah, same here, because it reminds me of I've talked about this movie before with people, and it like you said with The Graduate, it feels like you have The Graduate, and I think some people would point to something like Annie Hall, you know, as like kind of shifting romantic comedies, and then High Fidelity was another one that kind of was like. Yes. Yeah, and then I think 500 Days of Summer was like 2009 or 2010.
Yeah, 2009, yeah.
Yeah, so like it just sort of like captures an era in a way that's pretty interesting, and maybe we'll be seeing a 500 Days of Summer / Graduate / Annie Hall kind of movie coming out
I mean,
here soon. I don't think we've had one in a while.
sort of. I
Maybe
mean,
The
I
Big
know.
Sick.
Yeah, there's Big Sick. I think Ruby Spark kind of continued this trend in a way that I found pretty interesting. I think that was like a good step forward after 500 Days of Summer, but I don't think that's like one of the best romantic comedies of all time. I would consider it more of a dramedy in the literal sense, but I think there are really good romantic comedies that are still coming out. You know, obviously with Netflix now, they seem to be kind of pushing that genre up again into relevance, and you know, it's good. I mean, I always have a soft spot for romantic comedies. I guess another example would be When Harry Met Sally, and you know, I mean, there are so many great films.
Which
like
is
that.
my favorite, but
Yeah.
yes.
With your Rob Reiner, who I do think that's
right.
probably my favorite Rob Reiner film. If
We
not
don't
that,
need
then
to get
Stand
into
By
the
Me.
Rob Reiner debates again.
No, I'm
Let's-
praising Rob Reiner. Jeez Louise.
I know you are. I know you are. But I know what's coming, and I know if I start
No,
to
I
say
didn't-
nice
I
things about
wasn't-
Rob Reiner, you're just
wasn't
gonna
even-
swoop in with a yeah. But remember this.
No, I was praising his early works, which I consider, you know, I would say, you know, from
That's
I
very
guess
gracious.
from Spinal Tap to I don't know, like what is it American
Princess
President?
Bride, you know, some of the best. Yeah. Okay.
He had a great run.
Okay, this is from commenter Gilly. Gilly wants to know, do you think Shape of Water deserved to win Best Picture? Now, if you're hearing this and maybe you're not listening to this in 2018, and you don't know
I
what we're
didn't
talking
see
about.
500 Days of Summer. That's my contribution to that last conversation.
Sorry, Robert. Well, Maverick, you can answer this one first.
Don't
here.
you ever talk to me like that.
Right. So, do you think Shape of Water deserved to win Best Picture? It was one of the nominations for 2018 Oscars, I guess, but it came out in 2017. This was, of course, Guillermo del Toro's fairy tale gothic fantasy. I mean, you liked Shape of Water? I want to remember you said.
I have a very, very simple answer for this.
Go ahead.
Yes, I think it deserved to win. It was not my favorite movie of the bunch, though.
Right. Your favorite was Three Billboards Outside
was
of
Three
Missouri.
Billboards. Yes.
Okay.
I don't have much ill.
So you think it was good enough to win the award?
Yeah, I think this is like what I'm saying is basically a principle of bias, right? Like I really like Three Billboards, but I totally recognize and accept that Shape of Water was a beautiful movie, and like the score totally sold me from the beginning. It was just fantastic. So like I have no issues with it winning.
What about you, Sam Noland? Where do you stand?
I think it's an interesting question, and you guys were sort of alluding to how when you ask if a film deserved to win Best Picture, you're actually asking two different questions. The first one is it good enough on its own to win the award, / did it deserve to win against the other nominees? And I have a similar answer to Maverick. Yeah, I think it is a very well-made film. I think it's striking stylistically, and it's just structured and put together in a really beautiful way. I remember so much from it, which is really sort of my measure of how effective a movie is how much I can remember. As for whether I thought it deserved to win against the other things, I would have preferred a couple things. I was rooting for Call Me By Your Name, personally. But yeah, so I have nothing against the Shape of Water, nor do I think it shouldn't have won necessarily.
Yeah, same here. It wasn't my favorite. My favorite of the nominees was probably Lady Bird. I just really adore that movie, and like you said, Sam, I mean that's a great way to measure. I mean, I remember so much of Lady Bird. Next, I would say Call Me By Your Name and Phantom Thread. Those were my top three. As much as I really liked Get Out as well. And I think Get Out and Shape of Water are kind of in the same territory for me. But what about you, Will?
Yeah, I mean, this question's interesting because I guess like Maverick or like Sam was saying, I guess I see this question in two different ways. In that sense, being that I feel like if you're asking me if this is still my favorite film of the nominees, I would say yes. If I was in the Academy, I probably would pick The Shape of Water as my personal favorite of the, I guess, 8 or 9 movies that were nominated for this category. However, if we're asking if this is going to be the movie that's going to be remembered and talked about the most, I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think Get Out is going to be the film that's going to be remembered for a long time, and the one from 2017 that's going to be remembered and discussed and analyzed in so many ways. So if we're asking if that merits it being Best Picture, then that's understandable, and I can see that being more deserving than The Shape of Water. However, I think personally my favorite was The Shape of Water, at least from how I feel about the films at the time I saw them. So I guess it's a kind of a loaded question, but I'll say yes and no.
Yeah,
I think
that's an interesting way to look at it, I think. you say about how like what will live on in the consciousness because it's
Right.
hard to tell at the time.
Yeah, it's that like kind
I
of
think
good
Lady Bird will probably last longer than Shape of Water, personally.
I mean, it's just that kind of eternal question because like if you look back at like past categories, obviously I think we talk about like Goodfellas more than Dances with Wolves, and we also talk about Star Wars more than we talk about Annie Hall. We just brought up Annie Hall earlier in the episode, so it's that it's kind of that weird dynamic. Like, how do we merit like what is the best picture? Like the film that is remembered the most, or the film that is considered like the best of the nominees? And for me, like I think Annie Hall is better than Star Wars in my personal opinion. But
thank you.
But I actually haven't seen Goodfellas, so I can't merit that over Dance with Wolves.
You're kidding.
Wait, what?
We've talked about this, Sean. But I've only seen bits.
You should see my face
You are not
right
gonna.
now.
What? No, we have not talked.
Yeah,
about
we
this.
have talked. We have talked about this. I know for a fact. We
Okay,
have.
John.
I'm pretty
I
sure
must have.
that's
I must
Movies
have
we've
just
never seen
dispelled
before
this.
until now. Part 2.
Okay.
Oh God. We'll get to Goodfellas. That's,
Yeah, I mean,
that
I
should
own.
be complicated.
There's no good excuse. I own Goodfellas. And I haven't seen it.
Will Ashton, you are missing out on one of the most authentic and accurate Martin Scorsese films.
I know it's
Which is
brilliant.
seeing something.
There's like do you ever have like a movie that's like is brilliant and you have to see it, but like there's so much expectations with it that you have to like kind of put the whole world away and just absorb it all. And it's like I mean that's the whole reason I haven't seen Schindler's List, because like you just can't. I have to like
You
put
haven't seen Schindler's List either?
I haven't seen Schindler's List, although they are showing that film. I believe they're doing like a remaster version in December, and I'm going to try to see that in theaters just so I can really absorb that and actually see it in theaters as I think it should be intended. So I plan to check those boxes off someday, but for now I have not seen either film.
I've got to add Goodfellas and Schindler's List to the list. My own list,
Yikes.
John's list.
John's list.
And it's going to be just as aggressive.
Oh man, we should
okay.
change this subject immediately.
So this question's from commenter. Really though, that's though spelled THO.
Oh, okay. I thought you were criticizing my comment. That's actually
No.
That would have been a really funny diss, though.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what,
yes.
I thought it was actually well played, and I was like, okay.
Really though loves to comment on Cinemaholics, and anyway, that's all I got. I
That's right.
noticed that really though had a comment on one of your episodes, Sam, that you guys talked about.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
So this question is for Will Ashton,
All right.
but really it's for all of us. We'll all answer
I
it.
was gonna
instead of Will.
say it's not aimed towards Will. It's
That's
just about.
true.
I
So-
prepared extensively.
Okay, the question is, what is Will's deal with mustaches? What is
Well,
it? Go ahead, Maverick Hines.
Okay.
He is an American hero.
Will Swanson.
Will Swanson.
Everybody.
What I first got to ask is, really though, actually Jerry Seinfeld in disguise? With what's the deal with? Yeah. Anyway,
Go ahead. Yeah, you can recover from that. Just try.
All right. So, I guess to answer your question, I don't know. I mean, my dad has a mustache. I think there's like some subliminal thing with like masculinity and mustaches. I think as like
Like
red
in
blooded
culture, or just with you specifically?
I think me specifically. I'm not talking about the whole masculinity, but I don't know. I mean, like, I've had mustaches often in my life. I just think they're fun. I think there's something to be valued with a really good piece of facial hair. And I don't think it's like something that should win an award or anything, but I just think there's something, there's like a presence. There's something very masculine. Like there's a very, like it is very masculine, I guess, to have this like thick hair in your face and just proudly displaying it. And I hope that's
Are we on
not
Joe
offensive.
Rogan's podcast now? What is happening?
Is that offensive to say? I apologize if that is.
Thanks, man.
Apology rejected.
Yeah.
Is it offensive to say that?
Will, where are you
I
at
think
with
so.
where are you at with your growth right now? Give us an update on the stats.
Yeah, what's going on?
I have a goatee right now with like a stubble on the
Well,
side.
then what the hell are we talking about? I mean, what are we doing here? I got a beard. You want to talk about mine too?
What
I mean,
is
come
Will's
on.
deal with goatees? Sam Noland, notoriously, you are known for not having facial hair. Is that still the case?
Is that true? Am I known for not having facial hair? That
all over
makes me
Twitter.
feel so. I feel so vindicated in my boyishness.
Sam, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't know you for that because I, to this day, have no idea what you look like.
Oh wow, you don't.
Oh,
Okay.
goodness.
I'm kind of liking keeping the mystery alive. This whole distorted voice
Except
thing is
the
just
mystery.
really, yeah.
I can send you his Facebook, and
I don't
the
want
mystery could be solved.
That's funny. I sound like the distorted voice on like a dating show, so that you wouldn't know who like the mystery contestant is.
And now Sam Schiller, number 1.
I was gonna say you sound exactly like Tom Haverford's bad impression of Mark Zuckerberg on Parks and Rec. But face it, booking E720 was the best thing I ever did. Like that's exactly what you sound like.
Cinemaholics, known for the Parks and Recreation references. We were down to like what, Ron Swanson.
Oh yeah, it was mustache time.
We had an opportunity with Step Brothers because, of course, Adam Scott, Ben Wyatt, that whole thing with.
I haven't had a carb since Step Brothers, most quotable
Dane
movie
Cook,
of my
20
lifetime.
minutes, let's go.
I say, and I'm not lying. I say Dane Cook 20 minutes, let's go to my wife like 6 times a week.
Can confirm.
That's a real thing that I do.
I just saw her twitch a little bit because, like, it's Pavlov's dog.
Anyway, what's the next one?
Yes.
Mustache?
So this question is from commenter. Greedo finished last. Very clever commenting name. Greedo finished last.
Is that like a sexual thing?
No, I think it's a joke reference to the Greedo character from.
No,
Star
I know who
Wars.
Greedo is, but is it like a double entendre?
Well, nice guys finish last, right? I think that's what it's supposed to.
Oh god! I wish my voice wasn't distorted, so I could make like a Johnny Carson joke right now.
So the question that Greedo finished last asked, "What's your favorite movie from the year you were born?" Let's start with you, Sam Noland. What year?
Oh man!
What was the movie?
I gotta out myself for how old I am. Something I've tried so hard to keep secret,
Right.
But alas,
There's distortion machines.
Well, you should be. I think you should be proud of your age, Sam. You're wise beyond your years.
well, thank you, Will. That means a lot to me. Well, now that gives me the confidence
It's not
to
suck
admit
of
I
it's a
was
true
born.
comment.
Will is taking nobody's shit tonight, and I love every part of it.
Oh well. Well, now I can't get out of it.
Oh man.
Yeah, the
I'm enjoying this more than my inflection dictates. So I was born in 1999, the year of our Lord, which is actually often
like
referenced.
the year you were born.
What's that?
Partied like it was 1999. Yeah.
I see what you did there, retroactively. And it's 99 is often cited as like one of the better years for movies. Funnily enough, a lot of the stuff that gets praised most often, I'm actually not really the biggest fan of. Like Fight Club is, for instance, is what a lot of people will bring up. And I like Fight Club. I think it's a pretty good movie, but I never loved it the way so many seem.
I agree with you more.
Oh man, we're on the same.
I really like that movie, but people love that movie, and I think it's just kind of weird.
Would you say it's overrated, Jonathan?
Nah, that's not nice.
Yes. The other, I think, probably the second most common answer would be The Matrix, which I feel similarly about. I think it's very good.
I do disagree with
sci-fi.
that. I do think The Matrix is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I quite
there
like
you
The
go.
Matrix. Yeah.
But I do know a lot of people.
I dig The Matrix.
You're not alone, Sam. I know some people who are like, they don't hate it, but they're like, it's not as great as to them as they think it should be. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good movie. That's what I'd say. But I think the one I'm going to go with, I'm actually going to choose. I'm actually going to do the same thing I did with like the underrated movies. I want to mention two really quick. The first one is Galaxy Quest, which is a movie I only just watched recently, and I wish I had seen it so long ago. It's magnificent to have a comedy about like a TV crew going through like a midlife crisis in space. The other one, a little bit more obscure, is a documentary by Werner Herzog called My Best Fiend, which chronicles his relationship with actor Klaus Kinski, which, if you know even the slightest about, it was the most tempestuous relationship you could possibly have between an actor and a director. It's fascinating. It's one of my favorite documentaries. What's that?
I said nice vocabulary.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I made sure I went into this episode saying I'm going to say tempestuous at least once, and I
maybe
did.
Twice. I've never seen My Best Fiend, but that sounds
I
like a solid
recommend it.
recommend.
I would recommend watching though at least a couple of the movies that Werner Herzog directed with Klaus Kinski, of which there were 5. Only 3 of which are really focused on in the documentary. Well, yeah, that is neither here nor there. The pick I am going with, Will, I think, based on what I know of you, I think you'll be very happy with this. I'm going to go with Magnolia.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I like Magnolia a lot. I think, frankly, I think it's my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. I think I just watched it this year, sort of on a whim, which is weird. You don't hear that often. I watched Magnolia on a whim. But the mood just struck me, and I watched it, and I was just so taken by it. It's obviously like it's one of those sort of anthology movies with a bunch of sort of crisscrossing storylines that all culminate in one of the most insane things I can think of that I've ever seen on film, and yet I was just willing to go along with it, and I even had this really long conversation with my co-host on Anyway That's All I Got, Jason Reed, where we would just try to figure out what the ending to the movie means. I won't give it away, but it is surreal and magnificent, and I think the whole movie is just a really brilliant tapestry of the human condition. I know that sounds really lofty, but I love it that much.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
we talk about the
I really enjoy that film, but I would just say that there are at least 3 or 4 P.T. Anderson films I enjoy more personally.
That's fair.
I like that movie a lot. Yeah. I also really like the ending. The ending's the best part.
Yeah.
And Maverick, you saw that for the first time with me, right? Magnolia?
I don't think so.
That's the one with the frogs.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah.
I was curious because you weren't reacting, and I was like,
yeah, I guess I just forgot that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie. It was great.
We had to watch it in like 2 parts because it was so long, but
yeah,
you did not like that.
Yeah, that ending blew my mind. I loved it.
You were going to say, Will.
Oh, I was going to say, apparently, from what I've heard, I mean, I guess you kind of mentioned or alluded to it already, but apparently the frog thing was not biblical in its reference. At least when Paul Thomas Anderson wrote the film. Like, it wasn't until a producer mentioned that came to his mind, and then that's why, like, the stuff, like I forget which Bible verse it is, but that's like written as like an afterthought. So I don't know if that tempers how you feel about the ending or not, Sam, but I just wanted to let you know about that.
No, not necessarily, I wouldn't say, but it's certainly interesting to think about.
Yeah.
All right. Will Ashton, what about you?
It's just interesting because, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of at a disadvantage because there are a lot of prominent films from the year I was born that I haven't seen. One we already mentioned. So I was born in 1993, and some of the bigger films of the year I haven't seen. So I haven't seen, as I mentioned, Schindler's List. I haven't seen Philadelphia, and I haven't seen The Fugitive, which are often widely considered among the best films of this year. But among the ones I have seen, I was debating between 3 films. One of them was Tombstone, which I really do enjoy. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it's quite my favorite of the year. Another one is Nightmare Before Christmas, which I really do genuinely love that film, but that's like the hot topic cliche answer, so I'm not going to go with that. And my third, so I was left with this movie, which I do, honestly, I love it to pieces, and I think it's my favorite film from the director. I'm not going to say it's his best, because I think there's one other film that is, I think, I would say is probably his best film from an objective standpoint, but I'm going to go with My Neighbor Totoro, which I guess technically came out in Japan in 1988, but it came into the U.S. in 1993, so it qualifies for this example, and I really do love My Neighbor Totoro. I mean, I just feel like if I were to watch one of these films again, like right now, My Neighbor Totoro is such a happy place movie for me. It's so simple and yet so sublime. There's really so much about this movie I just adore, from its character design to its good-heartedness to really, I mean, just everything about it just makes me feel, so invited and warm, and just, it's just such a good-hearted movie that I do think is a masterpiece in its own right. So that's my answer. All
right. That's fine. 1993 is nowhere close to my favorite year for movies.
Not a fan of
Well, my 2 favorites. Have we ever talked about The Piano on this podcast before?
Oh, I haven't seen that one either. Is that from 1993?
Yeah, with Holly Hunter.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time Jurassic Park came out that year.
Oh yeah,
so.
I knew there was one more I was mentioning, and that's I guess the fourth one. It escaped my mind when we were talking about it.
That one and Groundhog Day. I love.
Oh yeah,
Groundhog
it's true. Yeah, I love Groundhog Day.
I always will.
So yeah, I mean,
You're a Dazed and Confused fan?
Oh yeah, shoot. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
He's probably my favorite director, but Dazed and Confused is not my favorite. Not even close to my favorite movie from him. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still would go with My Neighbor Totoro, but I would put, certainly I would put those two films in like my top 10 for that year.
Yeah. All right, Maverick Hines. Year you were born, and what was the movie from that year that?
I've got a small list because of how excited I was. Being kind of sober, I don't often realize kind of like the years and all this stuff. So when I got to just look up the movie list from 1994, I went through every one, and I was like stoked because some of the movies that I've already considered to be some of my favorites were on this list, which I was really excited about. I don't know if I've said I was born in 1994, so I'm 1 year younger than Will there.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give I also thought it was ironic. This isn't one of my favorites, but there was a movie that came out on May 20th called Maverick that year, which I thought was really cool. I didn't know that. But anyway, go ahead.
Is that your birth name from that movie?
No, from what I understand, my birth name story is that my dad named me after a Hank Williams Jr. album called Maverick, and my mom named me after the character from Top Gun.
Okay.
As you do.
And they
it just happened to coincide.
Yeah, I think it was probably more my mom strong-arming it and my dad refusing to let that be the only reason why my name was that way.
Any particular reason for the spelling, though?
My mom likes to spell our names weird. My little
I mean,
name,
I just didn't know if there was a special meaning to the way it was spelled.
No, she's just always done that. My little sister's name is Ryan. It's not spelled R-Y-A-N. It's R-I-A-N. My little brother's name is Jacob. It's
like Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, less about my family. You want their address too, Will? No, I'm just kidding. So obviously some notable movies like Forrest Gump, Lion King, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Now that one, and The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. I've mentioned before how much I love Jim Carrey. He's been one of the probably more like, I don't want to say like an idol or a hero, but like he was a kid who totally influenced me, or he was a guy who influenced me.
Have you watched Kidding yet, Maverick?
Kidding?
The show that he did with Showtime that just premiered this week?
No, I haven't.
I mean, I would check it out before we do the main episode because I have some thoughts and I want to hear what you think of it.
But we got BoJack Horseman.
I know if there's only like 1 or 2 episodes so far, so if you have the time.
Yeah, I want to check that out. But anyway, so yeah, back to Dumb and Dumber. Some of those that I really really liked. But my two. Wait, hold on.
So your favorite movie, obviously, is The Mighty Ducks.
Obviously. Did I leave one off? No, but some of my favorites from the year were Shawshank Redemption, and I'm kind of tied. I have to verify that this is right because I didn't write it on my list, but I thought it was on this.
What was the movie?
Let me get my big reveal, dude.
Okay, all right. Well, while you look that up, I want to say 1994, I think, is one of the best years of all time for movies. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that it's up there. Because you mentioned like Shawshank Redemption.
Oh,
Pulp Fiction.
I got my years mixed up. That's why I got ahead of the question. So anyway, I guess I didn't mean to cut you off. My favorite from that year was Pulp Fiction in that regard.
Oh, okay.
But a close second would be Shawshank Redemption. I really, really love that movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think Lion King.
And I've seen it.
I think Lion King from this year is my personal favorite, but I think a close second would probably be Ed Wood, the Tim Burton film. Which I was
going to mention Ed Wood too.
I love that movie so much. I do think that's one of the best movies about making movies in the history of cinema. And I don't say that I don't believe that's an exaggeration. I really do love that film. Have you seen that movie, Sam?
What's it?
Have you seen Ed Wood?
Oh, I did a long time ago. I barely remember.
You should revisit. I think you'd love that movie, Sam.
I do. It does sound like a movie I would like.
Yeah, it's a great film.
Yeah, I like Natural Born Killers myself from '94.
That's right. I forgot about that one too.
Yeah, and
I
also,
don't love that movie. But
yeah, I'm not a big fan,
one.
but I know it has fans. So.
Here's a weird one. 3 Colors Red. Ever heard of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Colors trilogy, right?
Red is the best one. It ends magnificently.
Yeah. And did we mention Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah. Okay. I never kind of glanced over. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Dumb and Dumber. I got all the Jim Carrey ones out of the way. Don't worry.
That's right.
I also think Jungle Book was from that year.
Huh?
Jungle Book, right?
The animated one?
No,
The anime ones
no.
were like
there,
the 60s.
There was like a live action one.
That might have been it. Something pulled up when I looked it up, and I was like, "Wait, I didn't think."
Yeah, Jungle Book's like 1967
Yeah.
or something like that.
That was
I
like
might
the
be
last
thinking of
movie Disney made while he was alive.
It must be a live action thing that I missed.
Yeah. There was a live action one in like the early 90s.
Yeah.
Um,
And Clerks.
That's right. Clerks was 1994.
As was Chunking Express, but I digress.
Oh, yeah.
Patrick, you were born in just a good year. That's our point. I was also born in a pretty good year. I was born in 1990, the oldest among us, and which isn't very old.
We're all 90s children.
That's right. We are. Sam, you're like right at the cutoff, though. And I'm right at the
barely
cutoff.
made it out.
I barely made it in.
Hey now.
For me, it's as easy as it gets. It's Goodfellas.
Yep.
Goodfellas to me is just it's Martin Scorsese's. You know, one thing that I think people don't talk about enough with Martin Scorsese is that it's one thing that when he makes his movies, there's a reason they feel so authentic. Yes, he did have a lot of the experiences or like secondhand experiences of being like a Sicilian American in New York. But there's also just the matter of his attention to detail in every movie that he's made. And Goodfellas is probably the best example of it because he's telling the true story of these gangsters, of these wise guys. He's adapting a book. He's grafting his own experiences to it. And he does it in such a stylistic like way that it's so memorable. It has one of my favorite songs of all time, Layla. Like one of the best uses of that song, the best use of that song in a film ever, actually. Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci. It is just the perfect trio of actors. Like every moment in that film is just artistry in terms of filmmaking. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, let alone of that year. And we kind of mentioned it before that it didn't win out to Dances with Wolves, but for 1990 films, I mean, I don't know. Am I missing anything? Can you guys think of a 1990 film that you would prefer?
I mean, for me personally, I think my favorite is Edward Scissorhands. I'm not going to say it's better than Goodfellas because I do
love that movie.
But
yeah,
I think that movie is really, really fantastic. Not to mention two Tim Burton films on this podcast, but I do think those two films alone are his best, and I love them both.
Yeah, I disagree just in the sense that I think it is a stronger movie, but they're both really good. The next movie that I would probably say is probably Ghost. I really enjoy that one. Yeah, I think Ghost is pretty good, actually.
I mean, I like it. I don't know if I'd put it like in the cream of the crop.
I know it's usually kind of joked about, but
yeah,
and you know what? We kind of dismissed it before, but I do think Dances with Wolves has some interesting moments in it. I don't think it's a bad movie at all, but I do think it's kind of,
yeah. And
we don't have to get to it.
I mean, there's also Misery from 1990, which is
I don't love that one.
Okay.
You know how I am with Stephen King. I do like Shawshank Redemption, but all right. This next question is from Twitter fan TDK Ledger, which I think is like the Dark Knight Ledger. So this question I wasn't sure how to answer. I don't know if any of us will be able to answer it, but are you guys going to talk about the whole Butch Hartman hate going on right now, where people are disliking his videos and sending him aggressive tweets?
Who's this?
Butch Hartman. Butch Hartman was the creator of the Fairly Odd Parents.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize that was his name.
So he left Nickelodeon this past year, and he's kind of doing like his own thing. I'm a big fan of Butch Hartman. I think he's a great, like, he just strikes me as like a very good person. He's a great animator. He did Danny Phantom, which is one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows that they ever did. More recently, I mean, he's kind of doing his own projects, and I'm just not aware of this. I guess people just hate celebrities for all kinds of reasons. I guess we weren't going to talk about it because it was kind of more of a television thing and not something that we're really clued into. But yeah.
I did hear something about this being. I don't know the specifics, so I won't comment on it directly. But I did hear it was kind of against the LGBT community, maybe not directly, but I guess not inclusive, from what I've heard. I think that's what he's.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think that's what he's alluding to, but I'm not 100%. I don't, like I said, I'm kind of like, I'm hearing this like very like loosely, just like here and there, people bring it up. So I don't want to say anything about it because I don't know for sure, but I think that's what the person is referring to.
So I think the bottom line is that we're just not really prepared to really cover this topic. But thanks for asking anyway. And I'm a Butch Hartman fan. If he has any issues with LGBTQ, that's definitely something that I do not approve of. Just me personally, but in terms of it showing up in his art, I've never gotten that impression. So it's interesting that you bring that up, and I appreciate you doing that. All right, this is from Twitter fan Catherine.
Oh, Catherine.
And that's right. Catherine's a big fan of the pod.
Yeah.
She's a friend of the pod.
Very nice lady.
Very nice lady. She likes to do puns with me on Twitter, and I appreciate that. Not everybody is willing to do that.
Good sense of humor.
So the question is, are you going to cover The Scent of a Woman, or was John just fooling around? Or just fooling? So The Scent of a Woman, I think we brought it up in the podcast at one point. I don't even remember what the conversation was around. I guess it was that, Maverick, you had never seen it, and you thought it was maybe a joke that it existed.
Yes.
Okay, but we can talk about Scent of a Woman.
I still don't think it's a real thing.
I think it's weird because it was like nominated for a bunch of awards, right? And I don't think it's very good personally, but I don't think it's like the worst thing ever. I just think it's very meh. It's Al Pacino and that guy from the Batman and Robin. What's his name? Chris
O'Donnell.
Chris O'Donnell. Thank you. Sam
I'm
Noland,
always here for Batman and Robin trivia.
That's right.
What killed the dinosaurs?
Sam Noland, do you have an opinion on Scent of a Woman?
I have not seen Scent of a Woman. You're really exposing all my flaws here. But I think I know Scent of a Woman mostly from being notorious for having for Al Pacino having won the award, especially over Denzel Washington and Malcolm X. So that's mostly what I know it from. And of course the hoo-ah joke.
Hoo-ah.
That's about as far as my knowledge goes. So I think that coincides with what we were talking about earlier. That's a movie that was an Academy favorite that just has been sort of swept under the rug, whether for the right or wrong reasons.
It's not very good. It's like really long. The message is very like on the nose, and it's not that interesting. And
is it supposed to be like very maudlin?
Yeah, it is kind of, and it's also just, I don't know. If you're talking about like prep school kids making bad decisions or like learning something from adults, I think Dead Poets Society
I was about to say, Dead Poets
much
Society.
better. Yeah, and this movie came out way after Dead Poets Society, so like I don't know. I don't get. Obviously, I wasn't very like aware of the Oscar conversation, but I think Al Pacino was still riding a wave of fame. From his just like he's had a great career, and I think that was one of those things. I don't know.
I mean, I should mention I haven't seen Scent of a Woman either. I guess my comments are echoing.
Am I the only one who's seen it?
I guess so. I mean, it's one of those movies like
you're the only one who's bothered. There's no reason to see it.
Like I said, I mean, besides the hoo-ah thing, I've seen that clip, and I knew it was like kind of like in that same camp for like. I think The Revenant is a better film, but in that sense, like Leonardo DiCaprio, like it was like that. Well, we got to give him an Oscar, like like with.
I guess.
Pacino was like, well, he's done all these great films, these great performances, but he keeps getting snubbed. I guess we gotta, because this was before Heat, right? So it's like, well, we guess gotta give him the Oscar sometime, right?
Right before Heat, yeah.
Right. So it's like we gotta give him the Oscar sometime. So they gave it to him. Like, here's your like Lifetime Achievement Award. So. And
he also he plays like a blind character. So, like, there was probably an element of, like, look how great he is at acting. He has to act like he's blind. And if you see it, I have a feeling this does not age well. And that it, like, really makes a mockery out of disability. But I don't know. I don't think it's a terrible movie or anything. But, like, the plot is just lame as not lame. It's just, there's nothing to it, I guess. Like, Chris O'Donnell plays this kid who gets in, he doesn't have any connections, but he's like at a prep school and he really wants to get into Harvard. And then he has to like take care of this like retired colonel who goes blind because of an accident of his own making. And he's like very cantankerous and hard to get along with. And they go on like this road trip together, and it's like it's too long. And like, there's this whole thing at the end that just feels like, I don't use this word a lot, so that this means something, but it's masturbatory.
Okay.
The third act of this one, so I don't recommend it. I don't think it's a very good film, and I don't get why it was heralded. But maybe there's something in what you're saying, Will, about Pacino getting overlooked so many times in years prior that they had to sort of,
I mean, that's just the reputation the movie has, or at least the performance has. That you know, he lost for Michael Corleone, for Dog Day Afternoon, for all these well-regarded films, and it's like we all like him as an actor, but when's he gonna get his due? But I mean, I have seen Malcolm X, and that is really a truly brilliant performance by Denzel Washington. That's probably my favorite Denzel Washington performance, truth be told. So yeah, I can't imagine that what Al Pacino did in that film is better than what Denzel Washington did. So
It is not.
Yeah.
Okay, this is from emailer Mark. This is a really interesting one. Hi, Mark. Which decade was better for movies, the early 2000s or the 2010s, or as he puts it, the 20-teens? So from 2000 to 2009, between 2010 and now. This is a tough one.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was going to be easy, and I made my decision, but I'm kind of reluctant about it.
Why don't you start with this time?
I'm not going to start.
Why not?
Because I just talked. I want to hear from Sam Noland.
All right, this is an interesting question because obviously we're not technically done with the 20-teens yet. So it's, even though it's just 1 year and some change, it's hard to fully judge the decade, and it's hard to judge the decade anyways, just because we haven't necessarily had like the period of cultural reflection. Like if you asked if the 70s or the 80s would be better, it'd be an easier question because we've had time to reflect. But whereas we're sort of right
70s.
in the thick of it. Sorry?
I was just saying 70s is much better than the 80s, I think.
Oh, way better. I couldn't agree more. But I think if I'm looking at, and I think this is just a product of time, but if I'm looking at what are the movies that when I think of the decade, which decade conjures up thoughts of better movies, ones that I would consider more of my favorites. And again, just as a product of times, I think I'm going to go with the 2000s, and part of that is just hedging, because we are right in the midst of the 2010s, and we're sort of not really sure how to analyze this decade that we're in as a whole. And I feel like I'm choosing it sort of out of principle, but also a whole bunch of my favorite movies ever came out from the 2000s. It's the decade I grew up, so it has a lot of nostalgia as well. So that is my choice, but I am a fan of this decade. I'm glad to be growing up as a cinephile at the time I am now.
Yeah, I'm with you, Sam. I was looking at it, and this decade edges out for me because it's got the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yep.
It's got the best superhero movie of all time, The Dark Knight, and Spider-Man
Batman
2,
Begins,
and Batman Begins, and Spider-Man 2, which I
go.
think are all three of those. It has the Pixar golden streak that went from Monsters Inc. to WALL-E.
Oh, yeah.
It's got one of the best Coen Brothers movies, and it's got a few of the best Coen Brothers movies. It has No Country for Old Men. It also has P.T. Anderson's best movie, in my opinion, There Will Be Blood. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, this is really the best era. I mean, it's got Prestige, it's got Memento. It's just.
I was going to say Prestige. I love the Royal Tenenbaums.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that late 90s?
No,
that was 2001.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you. But then it has Fantastic Mr. Fox, right? Because that's 2009.
Yeah,
which is one of my more favorite Wes Anderson ones. So. It has Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
How dare you say the movie I was going to talk about?
I'm sorry, Maverick Hines. You go ahead, Maverick. Where were you at with this?
2000s for sure. Because of every movie that you've listed and taken everything I have to talk about. Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite movies. I mean, No Country, Dark Knight, Eternal Sunshine, Memento, Almost Famous, There Will Be Blood, Pan's Labyrinth, The Lord of the Rings, Finding Nemo, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead. Like, these are movies that I love.
Gladiator.
So it wasn't even that hard for me, unfortunately. But that's just because I think I love those movies so much, and I didn't watch as many growing up. So the movies that I hold near and dear to me now were the ones from that decade. So
I have some from the 2010s that I do want to highlight, but Will Ashton, before we do that, did you have an opinion you wanted to?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, for me, I think if I look back on this, like, what do I consider the best year for the new millennium for film? I think it's unquestionably 2007. I mean, just looking at that year alone, like, I think that was really the year as, like, preteen, where I really started to take film seriously as an art form, as a medium. And I know, like, films like Half Nelson and No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, and The Savages, and Ratatouille, and Into the Wild, and all these films were really influential for me as far as like, okay, this is what film is. This is what film can be. This is what I can appreciate in this medium and how I can grow to love it more than I already did. And so I think that decade, or that year, I mean, has had such a huge influence on me as a person and as a connoisseur of art. So I think that's, for me, I don't think this decade has topped that in any way. But although I do think 2010 is a truly phenomenal year for film.
It is, yeah.
And so, I mean, as much as I do love a lot of films that came out in this ongoing decade, I do think, in addition to all the films that you've mentioned, we can go on and on about all the great films that have come out throughout the decade. But I think for that year alone, I think it's, for me, the best of the two.
I made a list of... Go ahead, Sam.
I want to say one more from 2007 that I think does not get enough
I meant
recognition.
to mention Michael Clayton as well.
Superbad. I love
Superbad as well. Yeah,
I will go to task for Superbad, but the one I was going to say is Danny Boyle's Sunshine. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm actually not a big fan of that one, but I know there's a lot of fans of it. I was going to say Michael Clayton was the other one I meant to mention.
That one's okay.
Oh, I really like Michael.
I thought it was
you don't like that
forgettable.
movie? I thought that. I think that screenplay is among the best of that year.
Maybe I'll revisit it. It has been a decade, so.
Oh, have you seen that, Sam?
Sorry?
Have you seen Michael Clayton?
Michael Clayton.
I have not. No.
Yeah, I think
man.
you guys are
getting.
I think that screenplay alone, I think you'll really love. But I also think it maybe is George Clooney's best performance. So, maybe. I don't know. It's a tough call, but I think that's among the best he's done by far. Definitely top 3.
All added to the ever-growing list.
Yeah.
I'd say, though, for George Clooney, 2009's Up in the Air is probably...
Oh, yeah, that's
great.
actually...
That's a really close
That's
one
for
in
me
my
is
heart.
probably the best, actually. That was the one I was debating.
And
Oh
speaking
my
of
God.
Jason Reitman, we didn't mention Juno from 2007.
Yeah, it's
showed
okay.
Diablo Cody. I really like Juno. I know that.
I think it's... I don't think it's
Really
aged
like it.
particularly
I
well,
love Juno.
but... I don't think it's aged great, but I think it had a
Well,
place.
Maverick and I love it, which means that
Sure.
you voted out the aisle.
And the Simpsons movie I do love as well. I know you don't like The Simpsons because you're a heathen, but...
Right, exactly, yeah. Only the faithful love The Simpsons, churchgoers.
Tarantino had 2 of his best movies, and Inglourious Bastards and Kill Bill, so there you go.
Yeah,
it just
that's
keeps
right.
going and going.
Before we move on, I do want to list. I made a list of some of my favorite 2010s movies. And I want to explain why this decision was tough. My favorite Christopher Nolan film, Inception, from 2010. We mentioned 2010 was an amazing year. Toy Story 3, one of my favorite Pixar films. And I give a lot of credit to the Avengers. I think 2011 was like a very weak year, but then the Avengers in 2012 kind of I think really started the decade off.
I was going to say, with 2011, I think one of the best films of the decades came out, and I know you don't like this film, so just bear with me, John, but I do think The Tree of Life is one of the best films from this decade.
I'd much prefer Beginners. That's probably my favorite movie from that year.
I do love Beginners, but I think Tree of Life is truly a masterpiece, and I'm sorry you don't actually like it, but I can't change
Apology
these things.
accepted.
Yeah.
I also Moonrise Kingdom, my favorite Wes Anderson film. Boyhood, one of my favorite Richard Linklater film. My other favorite Richard Linklater film, Before Midnight, came out this 2013. Wolf of Wall Street, Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not the biggest fan of Interstellar, but I know you like that one, Sam.
All right.
I think 2014 was a really great year. I know you guys. I think Whiplash. We talked about it last week. Is one of the best movies
For sure.
in recent memory. And I know you really like The Master last year. So
Yeah, I think that might actually be my favorite movie of this decade, possibly. I don't know. It's a really tough call, but I do love that movie immensely.
Also really love Black Swan, Arrival. I think Skyfall is one of the best James Bond films. I've always had a really soft spot for The Fighter. And I really love Prisoners. And I think 2016 was a really solid year because that year we got Sing Street, Moonlight, Manchester by the Sea. And then more recently we had Get Out, which I think is just like a cultural win. I think Blade Runner 2049, Call Me By Your Name, as we mentioned. There are so many from this decade that we could go on. And then last one I'll say is Scott Pilgrim versus the World, because that is
okay. We finally
all-time
disagree.
guilty
on something.
pleasures.
Did we mention Social Network?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, but it's also we had a
no.
couple of great David Fincher. Yeah, also Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That was 2010s, right?
Yeah, and then what was the other one I was going to mention from 2010? I guess Black Swan and then Toy Story 3.
Yeah, I mentioned both of those.
Okay,
so it's a good decade, but I think for me, like we were talking about, I mean, 2000s are just overwhelming.
I forgot to mention, I know it's from 2008, but The Wrestler is, I think, a masterpiece by all measures of the definition. I know that's not 2007, that's 2008, but I do love that movie so much. That's another reason why I consider the 2000s among the best.
Well, we offhandedly mentioned, though, that 2008 was good just in the sense of, like, The Dark Knight, the first Iron Man. That was a strong year. I think that it doesn't get overlooked or anything, but I do think it's worth bringing up.
Sure.
And, of course, the 2000s has Shrek, which
of course, yeah.
I think you're a fan of.
Yeah, and then we have The Cat in the Hat in 2003, which we've talked about quite a bit on my podcast.
For the 20-teens, they have Shrek Forever After, so who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call. I mean, you know.
The 20-teens do have How to Train Your Dragon and How to Train Your Dragon 2, which are two of the best DreamWorks films.
I mean, I will say, I guess a thorn in 2007's side is that was a year that Shrek the Third came out, which does kind of deflate the grandeur of it.
And Spider-Man 3. And
I like Spider-Man 3.
movie.
Don't you dare start this conversation.
All right, so we got to
that
move on.
was 07.
What's that?
This is... Go ahead, Sam.
Huh? The B movie was 07.
Oh, yeah, B movie. Yeah.
Yeah, don't you dare forget. This is from commenter Uma Berman. Uma Berman said, Cinemaholics, I have a question. What was your last experience with Blockbuster Video? No John Mulaney jokes. I'm preemptively striking that. And I think this is in relation to the news that there's only one Blockbuster Video left in the United States. That's the one in Bend, Oregon. But aside from that one, Dish Network has the rights to Blockbuster Video, and that company is basically kaput. Although I think the last one in Bend is probably going to be around for a little while at least. Mm-hmm. Last experience, why don't you start us off with Maverick Hines? Do you remember the last time you went to Blockbuster?
I don't remember my last experience there, but I do have a weird story from just a time I was there. One time, I was hanging out with my dad on one of my... He isn't around a lot in my childhood, so that's why it sticks out, because I just remember being with my dad at Blockbuster. And I remember the clerk, or like the, whatever, the guy who was working there, was like trying to sneakily suggest that my dad could buy drugs from him, but like he wasn't sneaky at all. Like, the dude was just cracked out of his mind.
Hey, you want some drugs?
And the funny part of my story is that I'm like 70% sure my dad bought some.
Please tell me the movie you rented was Scarface.
I can't remember. Honestly, that's the other funny part, is I don't remember renting a movie. I think we just went to Blockbuster.
Maverick, I think it was his plan to get drugs then.
Damn, you know what?
So, you just remember going to Blockbuster and then your dad shaking some guy's hand for a long time and then going home?
Yeah, it was a weird drive home, too. It was like sporadic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Maverick.
That's my childhood, everybody.
All right.
On that note, Sam Noland, bring us home.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm quite a bit younger than you guys, so Blockbuster was never got to be a big part of my life, unfortunately. There was one near my house, I remember, and I would go there, and I would actually, rather than getting movies, I would get video games and I'd play them and I like beat them and then I bring them back. And I'll never forget, I got the Kung Fu Panda video game in 2008 and just played it obsessively. And I didn't want to bring it back to Blockbuster, but I had to. But right around like 2010 or 11 was when they sort of started dropping off, or probably even earlier than that, in fact. And so I never got to those formative years. Like, you think about the movies you watch when you're like 13 or 14, they really inform a lot of who you are. And by the time I was 13, Blockbuster was all but gone. And so honestly, the stuff that's informed me most is probably what I watched on Netflix, to be honest, which is weird to think about. I had to do this like self-reflection in preparation for this question. But yeah, what is my last memory? I don't remember, unfortunately. I just sort of have a general idea of like, oh yeah, it's just this place that you go to. And of course, if I had known like at the time, what the significance of it was, I think I would have appreciated it more, but I was 8, so I could not.
Sounds to me like what I'm hearing at least is that once you're able to finish Kung Fu Panda the video game, you're gonna have some closure with Blockbuster Video.
I like to think that you're still holding on to that game. And that
I still have it.
Oh, do you
I still have the Blockbuster the tag on it.
Oh, okay, you have it.
I can see it from where I am right now. I still have it.
So what you're saying is you're a thief.
It's like on a shrine.
Yes.
I like to think that he's keeping the memory of it alive. He's keeping the memory of Blockbuster alive.
But the day that he loses it, or like, oh, I just took out some old junk, Sam, said Sam's father.
That's the day that
the last
Blockbuster
door is going to shut down. We got to close our doors. The
I have a
magic's gone.
responsibility here.
Yeah, the only thing
We're out of
that
drugs.
one store afloat was like the late fees from the Kung Fu Panda DVD.
That's right.
That's why I can never keep money long enough for my
There
paycheck.
you go.
Right.
You are bankrolling the final Blockbuster.
You're welcome, everyone.
All right. My last experience with Blockbuster, I don't remember the exact one, but I remember one of them. There was a moment when like our Blockbuster had to like be cut in half in size, and then they turned the building. Half of it became Blockbuster, and the other half was like a Starbucks. And there's just some sort of like capitalistic thematic imagery going on there. But that Blockbuster, I remember because I was hanging out with one of my friends that I worked with at a movie theater. And so we went to Starbucks, and we were hanging out, and she was like, we got to go to Blockbuster. And I was like, where? Like next door. So we go into Blockbuster, and I hadn't been in so long. Like this was like 2011. And the Blockbuster in my hometown had stayed open a little bit longer than some of the other ones, I guess. But she was like trying to sell me on Blockbuster, and she was telling me is like, oh, this is so great, and like I make, like for like $2 I can rent all these movies. And I was like, girl, like I'm on this Netflix, like I can watch whatever I want. Like I just remember being so arrogant about it, and not really looking at the like, the value of like video stores at the time. And I'm really happy there are still video stores out there. I mean, they haven't died off. I think it's Blockbuster obviously has, but you can still find video stores in a lot of places. Where I used to live in San Francisco, there was like a video store like right down the street that was really cool. And there isn't like anywhere I live right now, unfortunately. But when we go to the Alamo Draft House, you can still rent and buy DVDs, and so that stuff sort of lives on. But I wish that I had taken advantage when I had the chance. Yeah. Now there's like a Burger King.
What a melancholy answer to that question.
Yeah, well, there was a big storm like a little less than a year ago, and the building that the Blockbuster used to be in apparently got like messed up or something too. So like that's just one thing after another. But okay, Will Ashton, I think you're last to go.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I can't remember the exact last time I went to Blockbuster, and if I recall, it wasn't really much of an experience the last time, at least, because I think. For me, my time as far as video store experiences, I guess they're more spent with like family video and. Do you guys know what Giant Eagle is?
Like in Scrubs, JD gets on Turk's back.
What?
Eagle?
No, it's like a grocery store.
Oh,
okay,
thing.
Never mind. There's a grocery store chain in PA called Giant Eagle, and there was a video store in there. I think it was called Eagle. Like Iggel. I don't remember exactly, but I remember
like Piggly Wiggly, but Eagle?
I don't know. But I mean, I'm aloof to your references right now. But I just remember going to stores. I just remember like that like kind of overwhelming feeling in a good way, like of just kind of going into a video store and just seeing the shelves upon shelves of videos. And I remember with Blockbuster in particular, it was two experiences I remember was like getting, I guess, Spirited Away and Napoleon Dynamite like the day they both came to DVD. Because I remember with Spirited Away, like the first time I got it, it was like it just won Best Animated Feature, and it beat Monsters Inc. and something else. Or am I thinking?
No.
No, that's not true. It was 2002.
Okay, yeah, no, I was trying to remember what anime movies came out the year that it won.
Well,
Nothing
there was
remarkable,
Incredibles.
I don't think.
No, that was
2004.
That was 04, John.
Yeah, but Napoleon Dynamite was like 2004.
No, hang on. I'm talking. Well, I was starting with Spirited Away because that was 2002 or 2001. But I was trying to remember what other movies were nominated for Best Animated Feature. Because at the time I was like a kid, and like that was the only like category I really had any stake in when I would fleetingly watch the Oscars.
Is it Lilo and Stitch that it beat out then? Because
I'm looking it up now. Let's see. I just remember that in that category there were like 2 films I had seen, and then there was Spirited Away, which I hadn't heard of at the time. And I was like, well, what's Spirited Away? Like, I gotta check out this movie if it beat these 2 movies that
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I got confused because you mentioned Napoleon Dynamite.
Well, hang on. I'm leading up to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Monsters Inc. 2001. There was no Pixar movie in 2002.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what it was Spirited Away beat out Ice Age, Lilo and Stitch, Spirit, Stallion and the Shamrock, and Treasure Planet. Now, I don't care about Treasure Planet or Spirit. I think they're both mediocre movies. But I remember as a kid, I really did enjoy Lilo and Stitch and Ice Age. And I was like kind of gunning for either of those 2 films to win. And ultimately, Spirited Away won, which is a film at the time I didn't hear about. And I was like, what is Spirited Away? Like, what's this film? And I knew like Disney was involved, but I didn't really know much about it. So I remember as a kid, like vividly like going into Blockbuster and like looking up high on the shelf and like picking out the one DVD for Spirited Away. And then I like watched like 20 minutes of it, and then like that's when the family was turning into pigs, and I got scared and I didn't watch the rest of it at the time. True story. And then Napoleon Dynamite, that was a movie at the time. I mean, you know, like Sundance Buzz is a little different now because like there's like Twitter and all these social media sites that like, you know, as soon as like the screening's done, people can like tell you like, oh, this is a movie to see or whatever. But at the time, you know, this was a Sundance hit that like really had like buzz in the traditional sense where like it was word of mouth. Like people were like, oh, like there's this comedy. It's really low budget, no big names in it, but like, you know, you check it out, you know, Napoleon Dynamite. And then I remember like seeing the trailer when I went to a birthday party for Garfield the movie and seeing it. And I was like, oh, this looks funny. And then I just remember the day it came out, I remember like the same experience. I went to see Napoleon Dynamite, and like I saw it like just before it got like really popular in my grade. And like I just remember vividly like getting it from Blockbuster and like just like having that like kind of preemptive feeling of like, I guess it wasn't like before the movie got popular, but it was like before it got popular in my grade, and just like kind of like seeing the movie like that was going to be like the movie of that year for people my age was like, you know, indelible for the Blockbuster experience. So those are my memories with Blockbuster.
I have to say, because you kind of glossed over it, but Sam Noland does not like Spirited Away, which
really
I think is one of the best films of all time.
I mean, I was gonna say I did watch the whole thing eventually in college, and I do think while I do love My Neighbor Totoro as Miyazaki's filmography is concerned, I do think that's probably his best film is Spirited Away.
And I'm one of the biggest Lilo and Stitch fans you'll find.
And I love Lilo and Stitch. I mean, it's a really tough call between those 2 for that category. But, I think they're both really, really good films. But, Sam, if you don't mind me asking, why do you not like Spirited Away?
You know, it's a question I've asked myself a lot of times, because I've seen the movie 4 times.
Okay.
And I have tried to get it. And by the way, might I add, if you're going to throw me under the bus like this, I'm at least lassoing.
Welcome to my world, Sam.
Neither me nor Anthony Battaglia nor Jason Reed like Spirited Away, so we're like the 3 old men hosts of Anyway That's All I Got who don't like this wonderful animated movie. And it is wonderful. I think the animation is fantastic. It's a striking world. I guess what it really boils down to is that for whatever reason, which I've never been able to properly articulate, I just don't get into the story. That's basically what it is. I just like I want Chihiro to succeed, but I don't really care that much. And I want to, and I've tried to, and I feel like one day maybe I'll get it. But this is one that I want to like, and I feel bad for not liking, frankly. But I can't do it. Like I've tried to do it, and I just haven't been able to yet. So maybe one day, but not today.
You guys, I apologize for throwing you under the bus, Sam. It's something we've talked about off the air, and so I hold grudges. That's all.
Do you guys want to hear a trivia fact about Spirited Away? I just learned right now.
All right, then we got to move on.
Yeah, so I guess apparently at the Oscars when the movie won Best Animated Feature, Miyazaki was not present for the award ceremony. Do you guys want to know who picked the award up in Miyazaki's place?
I know who it was. Yep.
Ray Romano.
No, I wish.
Just kidding.
What? How great would that be? Hey, thanks everyone.
You tried.
No, it was Cameron Diaz.
Oh wow, close.
Is that like the most 2001 thing ever?
All right, so we got.
I like Cameron Diaz.
But this is from emailer Braden. Braden had 3 questions, each one specific to everybody, excluding Sam. I'm sorry, Sam.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, Sam, you can answer
Considering-
all these questions. I think that's what I like to think.
So yeah, Sam, if you want to, you can share this one with me because I know you love some of the movies behind this one. But the first one was addressed to me, John. What's your favorite animated film that's not from Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, or Ghibli? And I bring you up, Sam, because you did a whole anyway, that's all I got episode about like your favorite non-Disney films. But right. Except you actually went into DreamWorks and Studio Ghibli, which is why that's actually where the Spirited Away discussion came in. But yeah, no. So for me, I have a few that I was trying to decide between. I'll just say my favorite one is probably The Iron Giant, Brad Bird's 1999 film. Your year, Sam. That's why
yeah, that's right.
I think The Iron Giant is just an amazing achievement. It's one of the most rewatchable animated films. It stands up there with just really the very best. And this is a hard question because obviously I love a lot of Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks films and Ghibli films. But there's also Your Name, which I think sometimes people confuse that with Ghibli, but it's not. That was a movie that just came out a couple of years ago. But I really enjoy that one. It's from I forget who made it, but I think it's a Japanese animated film with a lot of the production value of the Studio Ghibli film, and it's kind of like Freaky Friday meets I know Freaky Friday meets just like a very like stylized anime, but it's also just like in a really good sense. Like I people who follow me, I really love anime. Like I'm into Boruto and My Hero Academia and a lot of that stuff. But Your Name is just a really great film. Kubo and the Two Strings, which I think Maverick you just saw for the first time, right?
Yeah, I love that movie.
That's a fantastic. It's probably my favorite Leica film. It's up there with Paranorman for me and Coraline. And then Fantastic Mr. Fox. I have a really soft spot for that one. So we kind of briefly alluded to it earlier. So that's how I'd answer that question. Did you have one or two, Sam, that you want to list off?
One or two. I could name a dozen and a half off the top of my head because as you referenced earlier, there was we did a whole episode where we just talked about them, and I spent that entire week up to that episode just preparing, just watching the not necessarily the deepest cuts, but maybe some of the things that not everyone would give a chance, and I found some real gems.
And I want to say real quick, I didn't mention any Don Bluth films. I'm not the biggest Don Bluth fan, but I do really appreciate his work. I think he's a terrific animator. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I concur with that completely, weirdly enough. I think, it makes some very striking visuals, but I don't remember the movies terribly much. That's not what I'm talking about. One I will focus on briefly is my favorite animated film of all time, which is Don Hertzfeldt's It's Such a Beautiful Day.
That's right.
I love that movie so much. Yeah,
that's
up there for me. Yeah,
It is. It's one of the best. I would say second best movie of this decade so far. To be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. But some others that I'll just say the titles of because we literally do not have time. Anything by Mamoru Hosoda, check that out. Anything by René Laloux, especially Fantastic Planet, Time Masters, and Dead Times, I would recommend the most. The Red Turtle is brilliant, as is Angel's Egg, and The Plague Dogs is another one. And I think that's about all I can remember off the top of my head. But there's so many, and I do not just plugging the show, but I do recommend going and checking out that episode because we covered a lot of bases in that.
Yeah.
So
did you cover Song of the Sea or Secret of Kells or anything from that studio?
Oh, I wish we had.
Because I'm not the biggest fan, so but I know some people really love. I love the animation itself. I've never really gotten super invested in the story. It's probably similar with how you are with Spirited Away. So I was just curious if anybody here is more into them than I am. But I guess not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually in the same boat as you. I love the animation of those films. I just haven't found myself over. Oh, you're talking about Song of the Sea and what was the other one that they did?
Secret of Kells?
Yeah, that's it. I remember being taken away by the animation, but the story itself didn't have the same effect on me. So,
All right.
I was actually. Can I just mention one film? I know we're running.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say. I mean, for me personally, I really love Mary and Max. I don't know if you've seen that film, John or Sam, or Maverick, I guess. But I think for me that is one of the best animated films, not only of this past decade, but I think ever. And I also think that's probably the best depiction of being on the spectrum on film, animation, or otherwise that I've ever seen, with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Toni Collette. So highly recommend that film.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but you've mentioned it before, and it's on my list. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie to pieces. I would recommend it to everybody and anybody.
And I know you really love Anomalisa, too.
Yes, of course. Yes, yeah. That's my favorite movie of 2015. So, there. Yeah.
Linklater's done a couple too, John, so I know that.
Yeah, Scanner Darkly and Awaken Life, yeah.
You guys know how much I love the Linklater. Okay,
right.
This question is for Will, Ash, and Will. Would you rather watch Batman v Superman or Suicide Squad?
Oh, Batman v Superman, next question.
Which I was curious, like, why would they ask you this?
I don't know, I thought the same thing. I mean, I did not like Suicide Squad. I thought it was like an absolute mess. I mean, you know how gunny I am to support Batman v Superman, often, against my better judgment, but yeah, I don't know.
It's like the Spider-Man 3 of 2016.
Okay, yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, weren't you the one that was actually supporting Suicide Squad in our conversation about it on Now Conspiring?
Yeah, I think I prefer Suicide Squad.
Mr. I throw people under the bus?
Yeah, and I stand to it. Suicide Squad is actually, like, watchable. That's the difference.
I think there's artistic merit to Batman v Superman that the bastardization of Suicide Squad
is... It's like listening to a 17-year-old rabble on about philosophy that he or she does not understand.
As opposed to
somebody who, like, being around that same person at a college party where they're just having a good time, and yeah, it's embarrassing, but you're just glad you're there.
I mean,
that is the greatest comparison I've ever heard to those
as
two
opposed
movies.
to Suicide Squad, where I feel like I'm getting hit in the head with a hammer 15 times. Yeah.
It's college, man. What are you
doing? I mean, I love having brain damage. Of course. I mean, I guess if the drinking didn't do that, then that'll certainly do it.
You only live once. All right, this one's from Maverick. Maverick, what is the movie that you want to see the most that you just haven't gotten around to seeing?
It's like the hardest question anyone's ever asked me. I have a small list because I'm shamefully missing out on just out on a ton of movies. So these are the ones that I settled on: Godfather, Lawrence of Arabia, Bridge Over River Kwai, Schindler's List, Seven Samurai, and Goodfellas.
I mean, we gotta talk about
seeing all of those back to back.
So I mean, I don't mean to dismiss you, Maverick, but you have not seen The Godfather?
I haven't seen a single one.
Wow.
Well, you haven't seen Goodfellas.
Well, no, okay, hang on. Now, Godfather is a bigger exception than Goodfellas. Like, Godfather is like taught in film classes, and
that's true,
and it's shown on TNT like every day.
Godfather is extremely long. I actually can understand why somebody would not watch The Godfather, because like that is a very long movie, and that is to what you were saying before. There are some movies that are so well hyped. I can imagine somebody just being like, "Well,
sure, that's
it just
fair.
Seems like a movie that I haven't seen, so why see it now?"
But okay, for one, I agree with you. That's fair. But at the same time, I do feel like Godfather is one of those movies that's kind of like a rite of passage. Like, even for people who aren't traditionally like cinemaholics like ourselves, like people who are cinema sober. Like, I think that's like a rite of passage movie. Like people be like, you're like 13, 14, your dad kind of pulls you aside and it's like, okay.
A list, well.
Okay. I'm just saying, okay, fair, okay.
I do think that it will pop your cherry a little bit, Maverick, in terms of like film going, because Maverick, honestly, Godfather.
Let me clarify again. That's why I said I wanted to watch it.
I will say, Godfather changed my life when I saw it. It really did.
I mean, and that's not even talking about Godfather Part 2. I mean, holy cannoli. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Watching those movies back to back. But see, that's the thing. Not everybody like has a situation where their father is introduced.
That's fair. I mean, I don't mean to generalize. I apologize if I did.
Yeah,
but
I mean, my dad didn't watch movies with me, and like,
nor
a lot
did
of
mine.
people,
but
it's like the same deal. And, I think that's very great. Like, if you get to have that experience, obviously, but like, sometimes when you're seeking movies on your own, you don't know what to look for until it's too late.
I guess I misspoke a bit. Maybe I shouldn't have said like your dad. I mean, I guess I just feel like at some point someone puts you aside and you just kind of sit down and watch at least like half of The Godfather or something. I apologize for saying, for generalizing as one's father, but I just feel like there's like that's just kind of a rite of passage movie in a lot of ways. So I apologize for generalization of that statement, but. Anyway.
Maverick has this look on his face of like, that's why I wanted to see it.
Okay. Fair enough. I apologize for putting you on the spot, Maverick.
It's fine, Will.
Maverick, I'll sit you down here soon, and we'll watch the whole trilogy.
Do you know what you could do for me, John?
Yeah.
We can move on to the next question.
That's a good idea. The next question is from Trent. What 2017 movie would you vote for Best Popular Movie? The Oscars has put out. So this is a reference to the Oscars having they were going to do a film category that is actually no longer going to happen, and it was best, or what was it, like most outstanding achievement in popular film or
best
something
popular
like that.
film. Yeah, I think that's what they
like
officially or unofficially called it. So
they want to. So this listener wants to know from like 2017. So this was last year, obviously. We already mentioned a few 2017 movies. What would you put as best popular movie, if you will? I want to hear from you, Sam Noland. Do you have a pick for this?
I do have a pick, and there was really no question in my mind about it. It's interesting because like most of the backlash, or at least part of the backlash I was hearing towards this category in the short span of time that it was gonna be a thing, was that, oh well, how do you even qualify that? Like, what are the criteria for that? Is it box office or word of mouth or critical reception, or it'd just be too wishy-washy, and it would things would get lost, I feel like. But I think if we're looking at this retroactively, if we're looking at like what was nominated for awards in this year's Oscars for last year's movies, and then which like popular one that wasn't nominated for at least the big awards would I give it to? At the risk of alienating at least half of the Cinemaholics listeners, if not more, I'm going with Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
I knew it.
That was my choice.
So knew it.
And how did you know that, John?
Your preamble just gave it right away. But also, yeah, I mean, I can see why. I don't know. But you were to pick this too, Maverick?
Mm-hmm. I don't have a beautiful vocabulary explanation as to why.
He called you beautiful, Sam.
Well, and you've never even seen what I look like.
That should reflect how I feel about you.
What would you pick, Will?
So wait, I'm trying to make sure I got the question right. Is this asking what I would personally pick or what the Academy would pick?
I think what you would personally pick.
What I would personally pick? Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think if it was the Academy, they'd probably pick, I guess, maybe Wonder Woman, maybe Baby Driver.
Oh, yeah,
like, I guess one of those two would probably...
But this one said, what 2017 would you vote for? So which one would you vote for?
That's a good question, then. You just got to go with Mother, a movie that everyone loved. Everyone was like...
It was popular.
Everyone loved it. Everyone was just like, that's a movie I'm going to take my grandma to see. That's just a well-rounded picture that everyone was adoring. So,
Funny guy.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it for a bit, but I'll say Mother for now.
Okay, really going
popular does not necessarily dictate well received.
Well, I loved it, but sure.
Mine was also kind of easy. But I wouldn't pick Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I would actually pick Logan, which is interesting because I like Star Wars: The Last Jedi more, but I do look at Logan as more of an achievement in a lot of ways.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because it's so dissimilar from some of the other franchise films, it's such a specific movie to that director that I don't know. It also is a movie that celebrates popular film with the way that it kind of, with the references to Shane and some of the modern westerns, but it also is celebrating comic book culture. And there's just a lot going on with that movie. I would vote for it. I would also vote for Wonder Woman, but I think those two would be kind of in the same category. You mentioned Baby Driver, Will, but for me, that's just Best Picture.
Sure, but I was trying to think of movies that weren't nominated for Best Picture.
Exactly, yeah.
So
and this is assuming that Kevin Spacey and Baby Driver got digitally replaced with Christopher Plummer.
Yeah, I was actually
So-
thinking about that. Like, do you think the movie would have the same reception had those allegations come out like in the summer?
Well,
as
it was
opposed to-
after the fact, though. You have
That's
to
what I mean. That's what I'm
remember.
talking
I think
about. Like, they came out in the summer. The movie came out in the
the
summer.
backlash to Baby Driver happened before the Kevin Spacey backlash.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not even talking about backlash. I'm just talking about from that Kevin Spacey point alone. Do you think that
Sure.
would have affected the film at all? Like, I mean, I guess it would have to, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It probably would have been nominated for a lot more. I don't think it was nominated for anything now that I think about it. Not even any editing categories, which was such a.
Well, no,
rob.
didn't it win Best Editing?
I don't think so.
Are you sure?
But maybe my
thought-
memory is
I think
just lapsed.
I think it did actually win Best Editing.
Oh, well, I apologize if that's the case.
I'll check
Um,
again, but I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure it did win for that, or at least was nominated for it. And that and sound production, I thought. But
Really? Because for some reason, maybe it's because I'm such a grumpy.
okay,
stubborn
so
person.
no,
Just-
actually, it did not win, but it was nominated for Best Editing, Sound Mixing, and Sound Editing.
Okay.
I guess I'm gonna have to assume Dunkirk probably took those awards.
But I would honestly give it to Baby Driver over Dunkirk. Although I honestly am coming around a little bit on Dunkirk as a film.
Well, you were
I'm
more
sorry.
supportive of the film than I was. I mean,
I was.
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually gave it like an A-, if I correctly.
Yeah, but I think that like in some of the like, I didn't really give it a lot of appreciation at the same time. But
Yeah.
I think that is one of the classic Nolan films where it's one of those ones where when you revisit it, it just sort of blows you away again. So that's a good discussion.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I looked it up now, and Dunkirk actually did win all three of those awards in those categories. So
Of course it did.
Yeah.
Okay, I know I'm such a. I just go back and forth. This is from a Twitter fan Ryan, and this is our last question before we got to close out. What are your favorite movies of this year so far? So 2018, Maverick Hines. I think I know some of the ones you love the most so far, but go ahead.
Yes, I want to see what you think.
Well, there's Hereditary
Yep.
and Searching. I know you really like those two.
Yeah, so obviously Hereditary, Searching, Isle of Dogs, Annihilation.
Wow, I didn't think Isle of Dogs would be that
yeah, I
high.
wasn't expecting Isle of Dogs.
You know, I can't remember what I gave it when we reviewed it, but the more I think about that movie, the more I love it. It was just such a good experience. I think where we saw it kind of had a major influence for me. We went to the Draft House, and that was great. Thoroughbred, I thought was fantastic. Game Night was fun. Black Panther, I really enjoyed. That stupid Netflix movie I watched called The Legacy of a White-tailed Deer Hunter. I don't know why I think about that movie.
Oh, I've been meaning
I
to
don't think
watch that. Yeah, the
I
Jodie
don't
Hill
think
movie.
Yeah, with Brolin in it. I don't think it's fantastic, but like I had a good time with it.
All right.
A Quiet Place and Tully and Crazy Rich Asians, and that finishes off.
Nice. All good movies, yeah. What about you, Sam Noland?
It's a good question, and I do feel the need to qualify because I don't go out and see every movie, or even I don't even see them on a weekly basis the way that you guys do. So I very much go out and see what I want to see like over the course of the year, and then towards the end of the year I'll typically go back and catch up on some of the stuff I missed. So as of now, I've actually not seen too many movies. I believe the official number is 20. I feel ashamed to say it. I've been focusing a lot more on like older stuff this year. But I have seen some stuff that has really blown me away. And it's funny, when I was looking at the movies I watched to answer this question, I put them in like a rough order, and I realized that my top two have a lot in common. And you'll see what that is. But I'll give like some runners up first. Incredibles 2, I thought was a very good movie. Had some issues, but I think the good outweighs the bad. Same thing with Annihilation. It just gets better the more I think about it. Upgrade was really good, I thought. As was MI6. That was the good. Again, the good sticks out in my mind over the bad. Avengers: Infinity War is a movie I'm sort of. My enthusiasm is waning on it, but I still think it's a very impressive achievement. But the big three that I would say are like my three favorites is one of them is Love, Simon. I know it's chintzy. I know it's kind of cliche, but it just really got to me and really brightened my day. So that would be like my number three. And then my top two, the comparison is very clear. Is Black Panther and Black Klansman.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
it's funny. Like I hadn't even considered that because I don't keep running lists anymore. But yeah, Black Panther I think is I've seen it 4 times now. It is one of my favorite comic book movies ever. It's possibly my favorite Marvel film, regardless of franchise. Like I think I might like it more than like Logan or something even.
Yeah, it's an incredible achievement in film, which is probably why they tried to invent that Oscar category to put it in.
And they were like, no, we're better than that. And
fine, we'll just give it the Best Picture nom.
And God damn it, they are. And Black Klansman just hit me on a whole nother level. That's it. I saw it a couple weeks ago. I have not stopped thinking about it since.
Good film.
It's magnificent, and I'd be surprised if that wasn't honestly my number 1 by the end of the year.
All right. Well, for me, so I have Won't You Be My Neighbor. I have a feeling this one will be Best Documentary of the Year, the Oscars. Paddington 2. There's my personal favorite documentary of the year, which is Three Identical Strangers. First Reformed. That film is one that, oh my goodness, that one just keeps climbing to the top for me in terms of like I can't stop thinking about it. Thoroughbreds as well. I'm also a big fan of that one. Searching is probably, it's also like competing with my number 1 spot. There's also Annihilation, You Were Never Really Here, Blind Spotting, and 8th Grade. So those are some of my favorites. And then also, Game Night. I always just feel the need to bring up Game Night because that one was such a surprise from a comedic standpoint. I was so just happy that it exists, honestly. And a movie that I didn't love the first time I saw it, but I'm coming around on with this, is Leave No Trace. I still am kind of around like B plus territory with that one, but I still find myself thinking about it. So I'm wondering if maybe I didn't give that one quite the fair shake. I don't know, but there was something about that kind of hit me. So, all right, Will Ash.
Just real quick, sorry, I forgot to mention that I took a little bit of a break for a couple months from Cinemaholics.
That's right.
And during that break, I feel like I missed a lot of movies that would be in my conversation here. I didn't see 8th Grade. I didn't see Would You Be My Neighbor. I didn't see, what was the other ones that?
Incredibles.
Yeah, I didn't see Incredibles. So I was kind of on a movie hiatus, and probably what would have been one of the most.
Blind Spotting is one that you need to see pronto.
8th Grade is one I think I probably want to see the most right now.
Both of those are right up your alley, yeah.
So yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
And Mission Impossible Fallout, I'll mention that one. It's in like my top 20. But I do appreciate that one from a pure like action film standpoint. Incredibles 2, I think I like it a little bit more than you, Sam, but I agree. Yeah, it's not in my top 10 or anything, but it's close. But Will Ashton, what about you?
Yeah, I guess for me, I mean, number 1 film of the year, or at least my favorite of the year so far, remains Hereditary. I do think of all the films. What was it?
I was cheering.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like a shock, like huh, like surprise, but sorry. Yeah, no, I do think of all the films I've seen this year, that's the one that really has taken a hold of me, and I'm sorry, John, that you haven't loved it as much as I have or Maverick has. But...
It's in my top 30.
Okay, but I'm just mean that like I just feel like that movie like affected me on like a soul level in a way that most other movies this year haven't, or actually most movies from the past like 3 years haven't. I don't know, it just really kind of shook me to the bone in a way that a lot of movies have not recently. In my kind of jaded worldview of late. So I would also say that Won't You Be My Neighbor is high up there. First Reformed, you also mentioned that one as well. But I do think, as I think about it more, You Were Never Really Here. I mean, I did love the film when I saw it, but upon reflection, there are so many moments in that movie that really struck with me. I think that movie might have my favorite scene of the year, which is the river scene. Which, I mean, that scene was so good. It almost brought me to tears as I was watching it in the theater. Just the majesty of that scene, I felt. But, yeah, I mean, I do really love Incredibles 2. I think my appreciation of it has kind of died down, I guess, compared to how I felt when I left the theater. I do think there's a lot to value in that film, but I guess I think there's some kind of rushed story things that haven't quite sat with me as well as when I first saw it. But I do really like Black Panther, Annihilation, Paddington 2, as you mentioned. A film we haven't mentioned yet, Death of Stalin. I really did enjoy that film a lot, and I think you guys might have fallen asleep during it, but I think that that might be my I think that is the best comedy I've seen this year. Although Game Night is a close second for me. I don't know. I really didn't.
Death of Stalin higher than Hereditary, so.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Mission Impossible Fallout. I love that film. I think that's probably my favorite blockbuster of the year. Actually, no, second favorite, probably behind Black Panther. But yeah, I would say those films, and then a couple others that I did really enjoy. I think I mentioned 8th Grade, and then Damsel is a film that really struck with me. Also, a film I haven't gotten to talk about yet on the podcast, but Madeline's Madeline is a film I really did enjoy, and I think that's a movie that has kind of been wrapping around my mind a lot since I saw it, and I hope I can talk about that next week, or if not, the week after. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of films to appreciate this year. Also, I think Tully is a film that I had some problems with as far as the last act, but those first two acts are really, really solid, and I think Charlize Theron and Mackenzie Davis' performances in that film were really good. So I think there's a lot to appreciate this year. And Upgrade, it's a fun blockbuster that kind of flew under radar in many ways, but I enjoyed that film immensely for the theatrical experience I got. So yeah, a lot to appreciate.
Yeah, but there is one movie that we forgot to mention, that is the Cloverfield Paradox, which
I no joke, when I was making my list, I almost wrote that down as a joke just to see like what you.
Oh, perfect. Well, I was thinking about it just because, of course, Sam Noland came on Cinemaholics to talk about it. So
yeah,
that's why it's my baby.
I don't know if I mentioned it, but First Reformed I also quite enjoyed as well, and I think that might be among the
you
most
mentioned
relevant.
it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that movie might be among the most relevant of the year, and I think that movie, if it weren't for some things I had some issues with, the end might be my number one film of the year. So,
which I count as bonuses and pluses, but go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
Sure. Okay, I guess we can talk about that more at length at a different time. So let's wrap.
For
this.
now,
yeah.
That's all. We got. It's been a rough 2 hours. That was very long. Will Ashton was worried that we wouldn't have enough questions.
That's true. Yeah,
So,
I thought we weren't going to get
direct
enough.
quote from Will Ashton earlier today. So this will be like a half hour.
So, with that said, we are out of here, but thank you so much for listening. If you love our show, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you find us. And thank you for being such great listeners and for giving us questions in the first place. We hope we can do this again soon, hopefully in a more of a controlled time. But this is a lot of fun. Sam Noland, thank you for finding us. And where can people find your spin-off show? Anyway, That's All I Got.
You can find Anyway, That's All I Got on its own podcast feed. It's just the title of it. Anyway, That's All I Got. And also once a month, we do have like a crossover episode on the Cinemaholics feed, the very feed you're listening to right now.
Oh.
We give like one episode that we want to give. We want to get like a bigger audience to perhaps entice listeners to come over to our show. And I think the crossover episode for this month is going to be coming up relatively soon. So keep an eye out for that.
Keep an ear out, you may say.
Yes. Keep 2 ears as often as you can spare them. Yes. Whatever senses you feel the need to sacrifice in order to keep a lookout for Anyway, That's All I Got.
All right, a lot of impressions came in just there on the wire, but thank you, Sam.
That was crazy. I don't know how accurate any of them sound since I lost my voice to the whips of technology.
All right, well, thank you again, everybody, for listening. With that, from the Internet California, I am John McGurry.
And for the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
From the Broadway basement, I'm Everhand.
And from the Internet Colorado, I'm apparently Sam Noland.
See you next time.